It's almost midnight, Watchers. Are you ready to join the Midnight Watchers to talk about their favorite strange and scary movies?
Welcome, welcome. This is Koji.
This is Quentin.
And I'm Jennifer.
And this is the Midnight Watchers, and this is episode number 17. How exciting, how exciting, how exciting. Can't believe we made it this far and watching these really crazy movies, that most of which I've never seen before. So this week, we're going to be talking about Count Dracula, the 1970 version, right? 1970? Is that when it came out?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll read a little bit of description and we could get into it. It's Count Dracula, a gray-haired vampire who regains his youth by dining on the blood of maidens, is pursued in London and Transylvania by Professor Van Helsing, Jonathan Harker, and Quincy Morris after he victimizes them and their loved ones. It was directed by Jess Franco, and writers Bram Stoker, novel, and Eric Kroenke, story. He wrote the story. Stars Christopher Lee, Herbert Lom, Klaus Kinski. The Robert Finching from the New York Times wrote, "This doggedly faithful adaptation is plotting and dull. Even Christopher Lee, Klaus Kinski, and 7 credited screenwriters cannot make this confused, distant film worthwhile." Franco appears as a servant to Professor Van Helsing, and though certainly literate, the film nevertheless fails as both horror and drama. That was pretty terrible review. And film critic Jonathan Rosenbaum called it one of the worst films he's ever watched. So I thought that was interesting. But actually, I got to say that this is one of the movies that I actually enjoyed watching a lot.
Really?
I really, really enjoyed this movie. All the movies we watched, this is like my favorite movie. And by the way, I watched it on Amazon Prime. I rented it for, I think, $3.99 or something, or $2.99. But what did you guys think of this movie?
Well, I think I was fascinated by I didn't know. So I saw this on Amazon Prime, and then I looked at it. It's actually directed by Jess Franco, but he's known as Jess Franco. So he's actually an exploitation director from 70s on, or 60s or 70s on, and he directs, and all the way to, he's still directing movie, I think. So he's crazy, and he directed some cannibal movies, and he's sort of from Spain. So he's not an Italian horror filmmaker, but he's always been lumped into that whole Italian exploitation spaghetti horror. So when I saw it, I just thought, I was just kind of bored, and then I was with my son, and I figured it's probably not scary. So I showed my son, we watched it together, and he fell asleep eventually. The beginning of Dracula, and didn't have really high expectations about it because I've seen so many Dracula movies, but I thought it's kind of interesting because it's using Christopher Lee, who has been starring in a lot of the Hammer horror, a lot of Hammer Dracula movies, but he's using him in such a weird way. And so Christopher Lee says Count Dracula is the only Dracula movie that he enjoyed making. I guess he didn't like the rest of his work or something before and after that. So
Jennifer, what did you think of this movie?
That's interesting. And I remember, Quentin, you had said that this was supposedly the most truest adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel.
I think that's critics says that, but it's pretty true. It followed almost all the beats.
And that he's sort of a playboy. Was that sort of in the thought novel too?
It wasn't as much as a playboy, but I think in the other versions, Van Helsing is always the vampire hunter. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. But I don't think he was killed by Van Helsing. I never thought so. I just remember that. I think the book actually followed the plot points really well of the original novel.
Yeah, I had seen 1 or 2 other Christopher Lee Dracula movies with my dad when I also was a kid. So when you say you showed Casper, that doesn't sound that far off. Because it's, wasn't scary and terribly bloody. But I couldn't remember. I looked up the canon of movies and I couldn't figure out which one I watched of his. So, and I was pleasantly surprised. I expected less, like you were saying, of this movie. And I was taken aback I thought the acting was good. I loved Christopher Lee's performance. It was just slow, and the castles, I don't know, I hadn't seen a Dracula period piece in a long time, so I think also made it fun, and this was a nice revisit to that to that world.
My
I
favorite
really
part.
remember watching a lot of the Hammer horror stuff, and the Hammer horror is always Dracula in the Hammer stuff. I remember as a kid, and this Dracula is less so. I don't know why, but it's just such a literary version of it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of it because it felt the most like the Bram Stoker novel. Even though, because I've always had trouble with the Bram Stoker novel, I never thought it was that as good as. I mean, I like the character, but the actual book has never been as amazing as everyone says. It's kind of like Moby Dick. Everyone talks about being Moby Dick being like the best novel or whatever, and I'm like, really? Have you read Moby Dick? It's but same thing with Bram Stoker. But anyway, I thought one of my favorite parts of this movie was the two women. I forget their names, but they're like, first of all, they're very,
Lucy and Mina.
yeah, they're very beautiful, but they're like dolls. It was like such a weird, like they felt like they weren't even real people. They almost were like Barbies that are moving that were very beautiful. And I couldn't get past that. I was completely focused on their characters. I don't know. Jennifer, did you see that? Did you feel that when you watched them?
That's so funny because I was going to say that too about how beautiful they were. And they were like the perfect like movie star face. My favorite kind of face, like, yep, small little features, beautiful cheekbones. Yeah, they don't move their faces very much.
They're like dolls. It was weird. And then even when they were scared, it's like they were like not really scared looking. They just were like just beautiful people, just like going through these scenes. Every time they were in a scene, I was just fascinated because I was laughing. But in theory, maybe it was just me. But I did think that it was interesting, and it was. I mean, it wasn't scary, but it felt like the most. I think it felt the most real vampire to me in that it like I could see some of these things happening. I guess I don't know if that sounds weird, but like it wasn't so fantastic. I mean, other than he turned into bad and he kills all these people, but other than that, it felt like it was kind of a truthful rendering of what a vampire could possibly be. But the one scene that bothered me was when the townsperson came in with a baby, or she was like, give me my son, or give me my baby, or whatever it was. And I was just like, they never set that up until like, and then later they paid off by seeing the baby in the bag, right? But it just felt like such a random moment, and it was like such a long moment. I think that was the one problem with the movie to me, was that there's all these really random things that didn't really make sense at the time, but eventually do make sense on some of them. But they're just long things. They're just like, what the hell? Why are we watching this for so long? But Quentin, tell me what was your favorite part of this movie?
No, I really like Klaus Kinski's performance of being Renfield. So I'm not sure, like in the original version, what was Renfield supposed to be, but wasn't he supposed to be well, I mean, a lot of people, adapted Renfield as the vampire, as the Dracula's assistant, right? Because he was eating insects and things like that. But I guess in the novel, it wasn't.
No,
he was just what was he? He was just a victim.
Yeah, I think he was just a victim. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was very interesting the way he portrays it, and there's this kind of incredible psychological realness to his portrayal of Renfield. And he wasn't like, and he was eating the insects was not like, because again, like Renfield was portrayed in the other movies as like, this crazy guy who eats the insects and who was sort of like, assists Dracula. And this one he doesn't. And even the way that it was done in more to show the way that even Klaus Kinski eats the insects is more like, it's done in a way that is not to shock you, but to really explore that character of someone who actually had a really big traumatic experience, and then he just kind of died on his own, and there's this very kind of like humane portrayal of basically, I'm sure, like, in Bram Stoker's time, somebody who was crazy was not portrayed that well, somebody who has psychological problems. So I think that was a very interesting choice on Klaus Kinski and director. And also I also like Herbert Lom, how he portrayed Van Helsing more as a professor and someone who's kind of more a nerd, than this vampire hunter that I was so used to being portrayed in, other versions of Dracula. So I think that's like a little things that I quite like, but I do agree that it is not a fast movie at all. It's definitely got a slow moving movie, right? And my son definitely fell asleep eventually. He said,
Jennifer, what was your favorite part of the movie?
Daddy.
So cute. So, was that his first horror movie?
Oh no, he saw his first horror movie when he was 2 weeks old. Yeah, I think he saw like The Conjuring 2. Is it The Conjuring 2? Yeah. Yeah. I put a little headphones on him. He couldn't hear anything.
Oh, goody. Yeah. Well, child of yours needs to appreciate horror, right? Same with me. What was something I was going to bring up? Well, yeah, you're talking about the two actresses, Koji. I loved the wardrobe. I was also this, the castles and the late 1800s, right? Wardrobe was just really great wardrobe design. The girls, I just loved their hair and their wardrobe. And the one thing I wanted to bring up, I guess, which is also one of my favorite things about the movie, is it made me think, basically, like what you guys are talking about, like Quentin, you're talking about like the psychological sort of relevance of the Renfield character and how that he's portrayed realistically. And then Koji, you were saying that it was, what were you saying? That it was like, you said something about real something. What were you saying?
That it felt real. It felt.
Oh yeah, like a real. Yeah, it didn't feel like campy and like out of this world and high concept. So what the movie made me think, maybe because it had that realness thing, is it made me think about like real vampires and like people, like I know that Dracula is based on a historical figure. I didn't look into again what that guy did, because I know that I looked at one point the historical significance, but I have a friend who's in entertainment business who claims that he's a vampire. And he says
he claims he's a vampire?
He does. And he said that he only needs a little bit, a drop of blood, like a pinprick.
Okay, he's crazy.
You think so? And he says there are other people in the business that are, and he claims that Oscar Wilde was a vampire. And I Googled and Googled and Googled, and I couldn't find anything, not even on Reddit.
Okay, I think this friend is a little bit crazy. Oscar Wilde was definitely not a vampire.
He said vampire means
also like these new things called psychic vampires. I'm not sure you know, because if you watch the series What We Do in the Shadows, there's this psychic vampire and basically psychic vampires are people, they suck energy out of you.
Yeah.
So they go to the office and everybody's like scared of them because they would like talk to you forever, and you talk to them and you just, oh my god, you have no energy.
Well, they're also known as emotional vampires, which is a real psychological term. It's the person who calls you like you're your best friend forever and then drops you, and all of a sudden calls you at like 3 a.m, wants to talk, or keeps leaving you, like a boyfriend that keeps leaving you, and then gets together, then breaks up and causes drama everywhere they go. There's like
vampire basically.
Yeah. Like there's this whole world around them.
Wait, so is psychic vampire a real is like a cultural thing where they can like tire you out and fuck with your head?
Yeah,
it's considered like you can be a psychic vampire just by drawing energy out of people.
Well, emotional vampires are a real thing though, right? Oh, hey doggy. It's like where people are actually like these draining like figures.
Well, of course I know enough emotional vampires.
those people are real, but
they don't even know that vampire. They're like, oh my god.
They're so dramatic. They're so dramatic. What's your doggy's name?
It's my parents' miniature schnauzer named Roxy.
Oh, Roxy, nice. Hi, Roxy. welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
A lot of actresses, some actresses I knew are such emotional vampires. Oh my god, I'm so tired.
I think a lot of performers actually have that kind of personality. They're just exhausting.
They're just dramatic all the time. There's constant dramas nonstop. Like, oh my god, I don't.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, I don't know, because as an actress, right? Like you just you know how to like talk about your feelings, and you're like needy for validation, you're needy for approval, and so I mean sometimes I felt like I am aware of that, like I don't want to be like an energy vampire is how my friend and I were talking about, which I guess like an emotional vampire, because I was talking about how my friend and I felt like she was doing that to me, one of my bestest friends, and we've had so many breaks over the years. We'll have time apart. We need breaks, like a breakup, and sometimes we won't talk for 6 months. Sometimes I think we went like 2 years once, and we're on a break right now. I haven't talked to her since January, but I sometimes thought maybe I'm an energy or emotional vampire. You know, when you're needy and you just need someone to You need to you need to vent all the time, you know? So I understand, I kind of like get that. And I just hope I'm not one.
Hopefully you're not. One thing I do want to mention is just the one issue I had with the movie, and I did like it at the end, but was just, it seemed so easy to kill all the vampires. It was such a simple, like they just had to go there and put a stake in, and I know it was evening or it was daylight or something, and then they had to drop a boulder and they killed all those peasants for some reason. But
Oh, God,
yeah, and I was like, why are you killing those guys? They could have just killed the person inside without killing those. But anyway, it just seemed like it was like a letdown. I kind of wanted a bigger thing, but maybe that helps make it feel more real, is that it was like this kind of just easy situation where you could just kind of break in and put a stake through their hearts and while they're
I
sleeping.
guess in Dracula, the same thing. I mean,
Yeah, it
like,
was.
back then, that's even the way that Dracula is conceived of. It's not really, it's not like, you know, there isn't a genre of like fighting or choreography or whatever,
Yeah.
right? So.
All right. Well, I think we're getting toward the end of this episode, so I'll let Jennifer. Do you have any other thoughts on this movie that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think everybody should at least see one Christopher Lee Dracula movie. That's just like, because he was such a quintessential Hollywood Dracula, and he does a great job at it. So this would be a fun one to recommend, especially considering Jess Franco, you said, was an exploitation director, which I didn't know. So he probably brought his own taste. I'm sure the Barbie doll actress character was maybe some of his taste. If you say exploitation, I just think, you know, hot, attractive women that are just sort of like, I mean, I haven't watched enough exploitation movies, but I know there's sort of like a stock character in that, isn't it? But
Horror films are considered exploitation movies. Horror films,
they aren't.
Yeah, they're like TNA, basically. TNA plus violence is basic exploitation movies. So horror films are sort of in that light, considered like in the 80s, considered exploitation movies. Or just independent movies, like, you know, Coffee, all the blaxploitation movies. There's Blackula. But I think that you should see two Christopher Lee movies, and definitely see Count Dracula, because it's Christopher Lee usually works for Hammer Studios, which is a British studio that created this whole genre of Dracula movies. So this Jess Franco version of Count Dracula is so different from that. So if you want to see, should compare his performance in Count Dracula, of why Christopher Lee says this is the only movie that he enjoyed making, to the rest of the Hammer movies. So you need to see what Hammer Horror one, which actually we're going to watch next time, which is Dracula AD. And so basically, Dracula AD is the movie that actually modernized Dracula and bring Dracula from the 1800s to modern time. So that's why it's interesting to watch both pieces and look at them side by side.
Interesting. Well, thank you guys so much for this talk of one of my favorite movies we've watched so far on Midnight Watchers. One of the things that we're going to be asking people to do for this episode is to make sure to subscribe to this podcast. I know a lot of people are listening, but they're not subscribing, or they're watching on Zoom, but they're not subscribing. But subscribers help us an incredible amount. So if you're watching this, please subscribe. Please come down. Make sure to go to whatever podcast catcher you use, whether it's Apple Podcast or Google Podcast or Stitcher or whatever. Please make sure to subscribe. And by the way, just as a plug, they're Audible. We're going to be on Audible or Amazon Music soon. They're putting together a podcast section. I don't know when it's going to be, but it'll hopefully be soon. By the time this comes out, I think we will be on there. But thank you guys so much for everything, and have a great night. Hopefully, you guys watch this movie on Prime. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Happy watching, guys.